back to our channel. Today we are diving into a chilling topic. The top 10 most prolific serial killers in the world. You may have heard of the likes of Ted Bundy, Jeffrey Dahmer, John Wayne Gacy, or Jack the Ripper. Well known they are, but in terms of victim count, they have nothing on these deranged killers. These individuals have committed some of the most horrifying crimes known to mankind. With ranking based on confirmed kills, we'll be exploring their confirmed victim count and possible victim counts, the way in which they brutally murdered, the countries where these heinous acts took place, and where are they now. Let's get started. Number 10. Abu Jabbar. Abu Jabbar, an Afghan serial killer, was active in the 1970s and earned the nickname the Strangler. Jabbar's confirmed victim count stands at 65, but estimates suggest he may have killed over 300 people. He used a turban to strangle his victims while raping them, targeting young men and boys in Kabul and nearby areas. His methods were particularly brutal and caused widespread fear in the region. Jabbar's reign of terror ended when he was finally captured by authorities. He was sentenced to death and subsequently executed by hanging, bringing an end to one of Afghanistan's most notorious killing sprees, but not before 2 innocent men were hanged for the same crimes. Number 9. Yang Xinhai. Yang Xinhai, known as the Monster Killer, terrorized China from 1999 to 2003. He confessed to murdering 67 people, though the actual number of victims may be higher. Yang's killing spree involved breaking into homes and slaughtering entire families with axes, hammers, meat cleavers, and shovels. His brutal methods and lack of remorse shocked the nation. Yang was quoted as saying, "When I killed people, I had a desire. This inspired me to kill more. I don't care whether they deserve to live or not. It is none of my concern. I have no desire to be part of society. Society is not my concern." After his arrest in 2003, Yang was swiftly tried and found guilty. He was executed by firing squad in 2004, putting an end to one of China's most prolific and terrifying serial killers. Number 8. Houshang Amini. Houshang Amini, an Iranian serial killer known as the Ghost of the Kunat Wells. He was active in Tehran province, Iran between 1954 to 1962, and was sometimes aided by accomplices. He is confirmed to have killed 67 victims. He lured victims to isolated locations with promises of employment or assistance before murdering them. He earned his nickname by decapitating his victims post-mortem and then dumping their bodies into wells. His crimes spread fear across Iran, leading to an intensive manhunt. Amini was eventually captured and convicted of his crimes. He was sentenced to death and publicly hanged in 1963, closing the chapter on one of Iran's deadliest serial killers. Number 7. Kampadamar Shankaria. Kampadamar Shankaria, known for his horrific killing spree in India during the 1970s, it is confirmed he took the lives of its 70 people. Using a hammer, he would crush the skulls of his victims, often attacking from behind. Shankaria's brutal methods and his large number of victims earned him notoriety. He was apprehended in 1978, quickly tried, and sentenced to death. Shankaria was executed by hanging in 1979, repenting at the time, "I have murdered in vain. Nobody should become like me," bringing an end to his violent rampage and offering a semblance of justice to his numerous victims' families. Number 6. Pedro Rodrigues Filho. Pedro Rodrigues Filho, also known as Pedrinho Matador, or Killer P, is a Brazilian serial killer with a confirmed victim count of 71, though he claims to have killed over 100. Active from the late 1960s to 2003, Filho often targeted criminals, claiming he was delivering his own form of justice. His methods varied, including stabbing, shooting, and beating his victims. His victims included 47 inmates. He also murdered his own father and ate a piece of his heart. Filho was arrested and sentenced to multiple prison terms, totaling over 400 years. Despite his sentence, Brazil's laws limit incarceration to 30 years, and he was released. In 2023, he was murdered by two men shooting him from a vehicle. No suspects have ever been arrested. Number 5. Daniel Camargo Barbosa. Daniel Camargo Barbosa, the sadist of El Charquito, or the monster of the mangroves, a Colombian serial killer, was active in the 1970s and 1980s. He confessed to murdering 72 young girls in Colombia and Ecuador, but authorities suspect the number could be as high as 150. Barbosa lured his victims with promises of gifts or jobs before raping, strangling, and then sometimes stabbing them if they resisted. His crimes created widespread panic and fear. Barbosa was captured in Ecuador in 1986 after police noticed him acting suspiciously, where they found him in possession of the bloody clothes of a year-old girl he had killed only moments before. He was sentenced to 16 years in prison, the maximum penalty at the time. In 1994, he was killed at the age of 64 by a fellow inmate, Giovanni Nogueira, who was a nephew of one of his victims. Number 4. Mikhail Popkov. Mikhail Popkov, a former Russian police officer, is one of the most prolific modern serial killers, known as the werewolf or the Angarsk maniac. Active from 1992 to 2010, Popkov was convicted of 78 murders but claims to have killed up to 83 women. He used his position to gain the trust of his victims, whom he then raped and murdered using various methods, including axes, knives, baseball bats, and hammers. He would mutilate his victims so badly that he earned the nickname, the werewolf. Popkov was arrested in 2012 and was convicted of 22 murders. After the conviction, he confesses to a further 59 murders, which he was convicted of 56 in 2018 and received 2 life sentences. He remains incarcerated, serving his sentence in a high-security Russian prison. Number 3. Javed Iqbal. Javed Iqbal, a Pakistani serial killer, confessed to murdering 100 street children in Lahore between 1998 and 1999. Dubbed the Killer of Lahore, Iqbal documented his crimes meticulously and even sent a letter to the police detailing his actions. He lured his victims with promises of food and shelter. Then he raped, strangled, dismembered, and disposed of their bodies in acid. After sending a letter to a newspaper, he was arrested in 1999. Iqbal was sentenced to death in 2000s. The judge stated at sentencing, "You will be strangled to death in front of the parents whose children you killed, and your body will then be cut into 100 pieces and put in acid, the same way you killed the children." However, before his execution could be carried out, he died in his prison cell under mysterious circumstances, officially ruled a suicide. Number 2. Pedro Lopez. Pedro Lopez, known as the Monster of the Andes, is a Colombian serial killer believed to have murdered over young girls across Colombia, Peru, and Ecuador during the 1970s and early 1980s. Convicted of 110 murders, Lopez's victims were often lured with promises of gifts or food. He would then rape and strangle them, leaving their bodies in shallow graves. The monster also claimed that at times he would exhume the corpses to have tea parties with them. Lopez was arrested and sentenced to 16 years in jail, which was the maximum sentence available in Ecuador in 1980, and he was later released in 1994. His current whereabouts are unknown, and his release has been widely criticized, given the scale of his crimes. Number 1. Luis Garavito. Luis Garavito, nicknamed La Bestia or the Beast, is a Colombian serial killer who was convicted for the murder of 147 young boys between 1992 and 1999, though the actual number of victims could be as high as 300. Garavito lured his victims with promises of money or gifts, then tortured, raped, and murdered them. His gruesome acts were discovered through a meticulous investigation. Garavito would sometimes decapitate his victims alive before removing their genitals and placing them in the victim's mouth. Garavito was captured in 1999 and sentenced to 1,853 years in prison, though Colombian law limits sentences to 40 years. He remains incarcerated, serving one of the longest prison terms in Colombia's history. These serial killers left a trail of devastation in their wake, affecting countless families and communities. Their stories are a grim reminder of the darkest aspects of human nature. If you found this video informative, please like, share, and subscribe for more spooky content. And as always, stay safe.